angels, it's Hailey Reese, and today's video I'm coming at you guys with a highly requested, long-awaited mythical creatures from my haunted house series. I had asked you guys in my previous haunted house video if you would be interested in hearing about the mythical creatures and mythical beings that the younger kids often saw throughout generations living in this family home of mine. And you guys were so excited and you really wanted me to share it, so here it is. I can't wait to tell you. But before we get into this video, I just want to say, if you are new to my channel, hello, my name is Hailey and we have a crazy fast growing family here. I think I can speak on behalf of all of us that we would love for you to stay enjoying, so please go ahead and click that subscribe button if you do enjoy this family and my channel. I really believe, guys, that I have some of the coolest people in the YouTube community subscribing to me. You guys are incredible, you are sweet, you are kind, you are inspiring, and you're so nice to one another. So honestly, this is the family that you want to join. If you are looking to join one, we would love to have you here. Today's video is probably going to be a little bit more controversial because so many people are open to the idea of spirits because that is of us. You know, we pass over spirits and ghosts are of what we were. But when you start getting into the world of mythical creatures such as elves and gnomes and fairies and pixies and all that jazz, people start to kind of step back and they're like, no. So today's video is going to be interesting for all of us to kind of dive in and form an opinion on what we think took place at this crazy house. If you don't believe in this or you don't believe in this video, there's no need to spread any hate. Just think of it as entertainment purposes. I'm owning my truth. I'm sharing with you guys what I experienced, but if you don't want to believe it, that's totally up to you. So I've actually, within my 21 years, never really taken the chance to full-on research, you know, the lives of gnomes and fairies and how they exist and coincide with us in this world without being seen. And I thought, well, if I'm going to share this video with you guys, I might as well insert some information about them at the beginning to kind of help us all better understand how these things work and how they could possibly be very true and that we may have actually really seen them. If you have watched any of my previous haunted house videos, if you haven't, I will link them down below. I mentioned that in my basement of my house that I grew up in the laundry room, there was a vortex. And a vortex is basically a portal to other dimensions. There is said to be about 11 dimensions, and within these 11 dimensions, there are other things that exist in them. So there's spirits, there's gnomes, there's fairies, there's all sorts of things. It's really interesting. I recommend that you guys go and look into that if you're interested. But I really think that the reason that this house had so much activity, even including these fairies and gnomes, had a lot to do with that vortex and those other dimensions. Fairies and gnomes exist in the elemental realm, and it's really interesting to me because the more that I dug into like their purposes and what they're here for, it makes complete sense with what we experience as children. It's like, it's mind-blowing. So, fairies are said to be caretakers of the environment. So fairies are basically the earth angels. They take care of the animals, they take care of the plants and the trees and the earth and all things to do with nature. It is said that they are extremely helpful, but they are also extremely fearful of the human race. So they try to live in complete secrecy next to them, helping in the ways of the environment that they can, but without really being seen. Gnomes, on the other hand, are said to live underground. Elves are said to live within the trees. So it is rumored that both of these, both fairies and gnomes, really care about the earth and the environment. So if you live in a place with lots of gardens or beautiful outdoors, you're more likely to have an encounter with a fairy or a gnome in your lifetime than if you lived in the middle of a big city with condominiums all around you. It's probably less likely that you'll see them there. So this story begins when my grandparents moved into this home, like I had mentioned in previous videos, and they moved in with my mom and her two brothers. The interesting part about this story is I have mentioned that one of my uncles is more of a realist and he tries to make scientific explanations as to why these things occurred, and this story revolves around him. So I find that really interesting because he swears that he saw what he saw. I mean, he tries to make reasoning like it was his imagination or whatnot, but the fact that future generations were to see it too is what kind of drives me to believe that it was real. Every night when my uncle would go to sleep, he would sleep in the bedroom that later became my bedroom, keep this in mind, And that bedroom overlooked the beautiful gardens in the backyard, not the front yard, the backyard. Every single night when he would go to bed and go to sleep, he would be woken up by what he referred to as the little people marching across the windowsill with all of their work supplies to go work on his mother's garden, my grandma. My uncle is actually an artist, and he is so amazing, and he offered to make a painting that I could insert into my video here so you guys can see exactly what he saw. So I'll insert that right here. That was so cool of him. I think it was awesome that he wanted to give you guys that visual, especially because he's kind of a skeptic now, so I find that really, really cool. But so this is the painting, and he said that he would see it as silhouettes because the moon would shine outside. Obviously not as big as the painting, but the moon would shine outside, and all he would see was these little people with all of their like rakes and wheelbarrows and all the things to go tend to his mom's garden. They would walk across the windowsill and they would head off to go work on the garden. Keep in mind, my uncle's in his 40s now, and he still remembers exactly what it was that he saw when he was a child. So I think that in itself is a statement that he truly believed that he saw it as a kid. One night, he was really, really sick of seeing the little people and no one else being able to see them. And so he decided that he was gonna go and wake up my grandma and bring her into the room to sleep with him. So he brings my grandma into his room to sleep with him, and my grandma is laying in the bed with my uncle, and they both fall asleep. Well, he wakes up and he sees the little people, that he calls them the little people, marching across his windowsill again. And he's like, Mom, wake up, the little people are marching across the windowsill. And my grandma will swear up and down on her life, she tried with all of her might to open her eyes to see the little people, and she couldn't. She was awake, but she could not open her eyes to see the little people. And my uncle's freaking out, Mom, open your eyes, they're right there. And my grandma couldn't open her eyes. So as soon as the little people march off of the windowsill and they go ahead to tend to the garden, my grandma's eyes open. Now, I find this interesting because as I was digging through research looking back now, most common people to see these types of mythical creatures are children, because children have wild imaginations. And so for a child to see it, parents and others in the world could play it off as, oh, you know, it's in their head, they're imagining, they have an imagination running wild. But if an adult were to see little people going across the windowsill, they'd probably freak out a little more, run outside with like a hammer and try to get them, a hammer, a bat, I don't know, something. So it all started with the little people, and my uncle was the first of any of us to see them. But it moves on to the fairies, and that's where my uncle once again fell victim to seeing them. My uncle was out in the front yard, and my grandma had a bunch of plants that were dying. And the next day, and keep in mind he was very, very small, the next day my grandma comes outside and her beautiful flowers have all just like rebloomed, they've reblossomed, they look incredible. And my grandma's saying to my grandpa, I can't believe it, I thought these were completely dead. And my uncle so nonchalantly says to my grandma, well, the fairies fixed it, of course. My grandma's like, what fairies? Because my grandma believes in that stuff. She was never like ever just discounting or disregarding that what we were saying was true. Truly, she was awesome. She believed it. He said that he saw these beautiful little fairies sprinkling their love, was what he called it, on top of the flowers, and that they told him that they were going to save them. So my uncle went on to see all of these things until he hit his teenage years, and he says it's around then that he doesn't remember ever seeing them ever again, which I find interesting considering that was when he was transforming from a child into an adult. And so they probably decided that his imagination wasn't running as wild and that they couldn't play it off as that, and they probably hid from him as well. But that was not the end of these gnomes and these fairies. My uncle has a son, not the cousin that I played with all the time, his older brother. And he was very little at the time, and he was staying with my grandma as well. As you can see, she babysat all of us. And I can't really tell you exactly how old he was. Probably around 4 years old. And they were getting ready to take him out somewhere, and they told him that he had to clean up all of his toys. But he goes over to like this, hold on, FaceTime Grams. I need to see what it was exactly.
Hello.
Hi, I'm filming a video right now on the fairies and the gnomes and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about when the fairies picked up all the things for Ian.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that he spilt?
I think it was marbles.
Marbles?
I think it was marbles all over the place. Plus some of his other toys he had tossed around.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, love you.
Love me too.
Bye. Okay, so he was sent downstairs to clean up all of his toys, and being a rebellious 4-year-old, he decided to dump a big, giant, like, tube thing of marbles all over the floor and throw all of his toys all around. So my grandma goes downstairs and she sees that he has not cleaned up his mess. He's actually made the mess 10 times worse, and she starts giving him serious trouble. She's like, look, Ian, like, you were supposed to clean up your toys. This is very bad. Like, you're gonna be in trouble for this, but we need to leave. So she scolds him and he's in trouble and he's crying because every 4-year-old cries when they get in trouble, and she takes him out of the house. Keep in mind, it was only my grandma and Ian home that day. My grandpa was at work, no one else was at the house. They go out, they do what they need to do. When they get back to the house, every single marble is put back into the marble container. Every single toy is in its perfect position. But even my uncle and my grandma, because they both were there at the same time after, both noted that it was organized in a way that they knew Ian didn't do it. They knew that nobody that we knew would have done it because it was so organized. And so they go downstairs and my grandma and them are looking around and they're like, who did this? And they hear Ian say out into the air, thank you. And my grandma's like, who are you thanking? And he's like, the fairies. And my grandma's like, you're thanking the fairies? And then my uncle's looking at my grandma because when he was a kid, he talked to the fairies too. And Ian says, they told me they would clean it all up for me. Fast forward to when his younger brother is born, and this is the cousin who's just a few years older than me that I always played with and had the experience with the old man in the laundry room, if you guys remember. He used to always go on talking about how there were little people in the garden. He called them little people too. How there were little people in the garden and that they lived in there, and that he tried to show Grandma, but every time Grandma would come around, they would scurry and go hide in their houses. So that's like crazy. And now we're gonna get into where I start to see them. So I'm born a few years after all of this has happened. I'm actually born way years later. And I loved nature. Like, I can't even explain the connection that I have with nature. My grandma will tell you guys that I always had to hug every single tree. If we would go for walks around the block, I had to run up to every single tree, hug it and say, I love you, tree. I had to talk to every plant and every animal. I told everything how much I loved it from a very, very, very small age. So I saw these things a million times more than anyone else. I remember I used to make friends with the fairies in the garden, and I used to make friends with the gnomes that would go on the ledge. And I never talked about them to anyone because when I was a kid, they would actually tell me that they didn't want the adults to see them. So I thought that we had like this secret like thing that we had going on. And so we used to play together all the time, and you guys didn't discount this as a kid's imagination. I don't know like what to make of it, but these are my memories. We used to play together all the time. I would see the fairies in the garden, I would see the gnomes on the ledge, I would see the gnomes. They lived in the back garden, in my opinion. I don't know what garden my cousin used to say they lived in, but to me they lived in the back garden. The fairies occupied the front garden. And I used to always think, and I still think this, that at nighttime this house was so magical and like so occupied by so many good and like weird and bad things, that I used to think everything came to life at night. That was like what I thought, because that was when the gnomes came out to play. That was when the fairies were like the most like giggly outside and things like that. So I thought that the house just came to magic and came to life at night, because I mean, I watched a lot of kids shows where things would come to life at night, so it made sense to me as a kid. It wasn't until one day my grandma and I were so casually talking as like I was little, and I started to tell her, oh yeah, there's little people in the yard. They're called gnomes. And my grandma's like, Hailey's like 5, like what does she know about gnomes? So she starts to pry at me, and I said, they come out at night, you can come see them. So now my grandma just flashes back to everything that happened with my uncle as a kid and how he said like the same thing to her, except he wasn't friends with them. He didn't like that they marched across the windowsill at night. So my grandma comes into the same room, guys, that this happened with my uncle, in the exact same room, because now that was my room. And we're laying in my bed, and I wake my grandma up. I'm like, Grandma, they're here, the gnomes are on the ledge. And once again, my grandma couldn't open her eyes. And she was trying so hard to open her eyes. She was in that half sleeping, half awake like state, and she couldn't open her eyes to see them. And by the time she woke up, they were gone. So that's basically the story of the gnomes and the fairies that all the little kids saw. And there were more kids that would come visit that would say that there were things in the garden and whatnot. But I mean, so many people just disregarded it for us having an imagination. And maybe we did. Maybe we just did have a really wild imagination. But to have multiple generations years apart, seeing the same thing and talking about the same thing. And then for my grandma to have that same experience between my uncle and myself, to me it just seems a little bit suspicious that that would be made up by all the kids. I don't know, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm open to anything. I mean, I'm owning my truth. I know that that was what I saw as a kid, but I also know that kids have wild imaginations, so I'm open to both sides of things. I'd like to believe that fairies and gnomes and all those things exist. I mean, I've said it before in my other videos. You can't believe in some things and not believe in the rest. I mean, we believe in God and we can't see him, so maybe fairies and gnomes are the same. Well, you guys, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I also want to add that next week I'm going to be filming a video with my mom and grandma. You guys have asked me so many times to bring them onto this channel, and they've decided that they will. So you'll be hearing some of these experiences through their shoes and what they experienced and what they saw. So you'll definitely get to hear their sides of the story, and I think that will be really, really cool. They're not just gonna take note on things like this, they're gonna take note of the haunted house, and it's gonna be an episode in the haunted house series, so stay tuned for that. I really, really hope you guys enjoy that. Like I said, if you're interested in the 11 dimensions and the different realms and the fairies and the gnomes and all that jazz, I'm gonna leave some links down below that I think you guys would really enjoy to read up on. It's really interesting, and it's so crazy to me now because I just researched this stuff yesterday to kind of give you guys more of a background on them, and so many of these things make so much sense with this house. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. I post a ton of videos and I really don't want you guys to miss when I upload. And please give this video a big thumbs up. Like I always say, it makes my heart super happy when you guys do that, and I really, really appreciate it when you do. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness. And until next time, love you.